Hey Hoopers, today I'm here to teach you guys how to make your very own push button rivet polypro hoop. So the same thing is going to apply the same theories will apply for any kind of tubing that you're using. Polypro is actually the hardest to work with in my opinion, so keep that in mind. I'm going to go over all the different tools that I use, where you can buy them, different things like that, and how to get a really good connection, which is the hardest part, I think, about making a hoop. But yeah, we're going to go over all of that, and hopefully you guys can totally learn from this and start making your own hoops. Alright, so I have here everything that I typically use to make a hoop. I also forgot the purple grip, because I'm going to need to put purple grip tape on this hoop. So anyway, I'll just kind of start in order. The first thing that you're going to want to use is a flexible measuring tape. These are super cheap, easy to get. Usually your mom will have one or something. I also am going to need a tubing cutter. So this is my tubing cutter. Just really simple, cost like 11 bucks. I think you can get them for like $8 on Amazon. A rivet gun and rivets. So this, I think I bought this rivet gun with a set of rivets and it was like, I don't know, $12 or something like that. And these are the rivets that I use. Let's see if we can get it to click on that. Maybe not. Okay. So these are the rivets I use. They're just 1/8 aluminum short rivets. The long ones don't really fit into tubing unless you're using bigger tubing, so I wouldn't worry about that. I use a Dremel tool with the sanding attachment. And this is to sand the ends of my connections. It makes it way easier than hand sanding, although you can use a piece of sandpaper. My insert, my Polypro insert for the inside of my tubing. This is my 5/8 UV aquamarine tubing. I have a drill. This is just like a pretty basic drill for, I don't know, I got this like 3 or 4 years ago for school. And then I bought like a bunch of drill bits, and these are the ones I use for my rivets. It's a really, really tiny one. It's 9/64. So I mean basically you want 1/8 of an inch. And then this one is 7/32. Okay, whatever. 7/32. I don't know. Anyway, that's for my push button, which I actually forgot to grab. Alright, and I have my little push button. Sometimes if the connector gets stuck or something, I might need a pair of pliers, or sometimes I will use a hammer if a rivet doesn't come out all the way. I'll just hammer in with hammer the rivet in, and it'll usually go flush, and it's not a problem. Obviously my gaff tape, and the only other thing that I may use is if I'm having a hard time getting the connector to go into the tubing, which probably won't be that much of a problem. I will go downstairs to my wood stove and heat up the ends of the tubing in warm water, because my house is absolutely freezing. But anyway, another thing to mention about the insert is that you want the insert to kind of like match the curve of your tubing here, okay? So I want to make sure that this is about the same curve. If you have a piece that is too curved, it's going to make your hoop have kind of like, an egg shape this way. If it's too flat, it's going to be rounded and have an egg shape the other way. So that's why the curve of your connector is very important. So this is 5/8 tubing, and I'm using 1/2 inch tubing for my connector, and I actually have a roll of that over here that I cut off of. But anyway, let's get started. Alright, so the first step is to measure out your tubing. So I'm going to check on what size I need to make this hoop. Alright, this hoop is going to be 33 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the tape right at the edge, and I'm just going to keep going all the way around. And to determine how big you want your hoop to be, it's going to need to be the diameter times 3.14, which is pi. So 33, I believe, well, I'm going to check just to be sure. Alright, 33 times 3.14 is 103, is what I thought. So, I'm actually going to start over because I just want to make sure that it's right. So I just kind of go in increments of maybe like 5-6 inches all the way around until I get to 103. So I've gone a little bit too far. So here's 103.6. So we can do about 103.5. And I'm going to grab my tubing cutter. Now, Polypro, like I mentioned before, is very, very difficult to work with compared to HDPE or a softer tubing, especially 3/4 Polypro, and especially when it's cold in your house. My house is probably like 50 degrees right now. That's an exaggeration, it's probably about 60. So what I do is I take my tubing cutter, I try and get it as square as possible because the closer your cut is, the better. I'm going to squeeze and then I'm going to just start rotating it until I cut all the way through. And that was a decent cut, but I know I'm definitely going to have to clean it up with the Dremel tool to make it flush. So now I have my tubing. So I'm going to put this back, this to the side. Next thing that I want to do is determine how I need to clean up this cut. So I can see that it's not quite straight here. So I'm going to take my Dremel tool and I'm going to sand this thing. So I kind of look at it from different angles and I just try to make it the straightest cut that I can. Alright, and then you're going to end up with a little bit of like extra plastic. And I'm just going to kind of peel that off with my fingertips. My fingernails, I mean. Alright, and there's a little bit of a nick in here. I'm probably going to do a little bit more, but we just want to see. So I'm going to stick my insert in. This one's going in pretty easy, so I'm not going to need to heat it up or do anything like that. And you see that this is about half coiled. You should be fine put that together. If it's really tight like this, there are some things you can do. One thing that you can do is take the tubing between your legs like this, and then you're just going to press it so it's almost straight as you pull it through. And it takes some maneuvering to get this down, but doing this a couple of times will definitely kind of open up your tubing a little bit more. Alright, so that got it a little bit bigger for me, but I don't necessarily need to do that. So I'm going to push this together. I'm going to make sure that the connector is right in the middle, or that the connection is right in the middle. And this is actually pretty good connection here. There's no gaps, so I'm going to show you guys this. Alright, so there's our connection right here. And you can see that there's no gaps in it. Nice connection. There we go. So now comes for doing the rivet. So what I do first is I lay the hoop on the ground and I kind of make sure that it lays flat. Alright, I'm also going to double check my measuring it just to be sure before I make this thing completely, you know, finalized that 105. Okay, so that's a little bit bigger, so we do want to cut that. So it's a good thing I mentioned that. Alright, so I fixed that up and got the nice smooth connection. So now what I'm going to do is drill my holes for my rivets and my push button. So a lot of people put their push buttons on the outside, but I like to just lay my hoops on the floor and just put them right on the side. I think they're pretty much the same as far as what's easiest to use, but I just like this because I can make a better connection that way. Alright, so I put my little drill bit in, and I'm going to go to the middle of this piece of tubing. So you saw my tubing, my piece of tubing was about 6 inches, 7 inches. So I'm going to come to the middle of this side, going to drill, and I put the drill in reverse when I come out so I can get a nice little hole there. You want to make sure your drill is nice and charged, which will help keep it from, you know, coming up with a lot of like plastic pieces around. If that does happen, you can use an X-Acto blade. That's one thing that I forgot to mention. You can use the X-Acto blade. Sometimes I'll use the blade on my tubing cutter to just get a little bit out there. But the hole for the rivets doesn't matter as much as the hole for the push button. So anyway, I've got a rivet here. I'm just gonna kind of squeeze that in there. I'm gonna take my rivet gun. You want to make sure you have the right kind of bit on here. I'm going to kind of press this down a couple of times and pump it until I hear that click. The end of the rivet pops out, and then there you have your little rivet. So for me, most of the time the rivets come out perfect. Sometimes they're not, you know, that perfect. This one's not perfect, but it doesn't have anything sticking out. It's nice and smooth, so that's, you know, that's important. Alright, so that's all it is to riveting. Rivetings were really easy. So now we have the push button, also not difficult at all. So we're going to put our bigger bit in, and you want to be sure that the bit is, you know, the same size, so you can kind of match them up to see. So I'm going to put this bit in. Make sure my drill is going the right way. That's super important. That was a mistake I always used to make. I'm going to kind of measure my fingers about 3. I'm going to make it the same. It's still in the center there. Drill. Okay, it's a pretty good cut. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up now. I'm going to make sure that if there's anything kind of stuck in there, that it gets out, which I think it did. And now I'm going to put my push button in. So since my, since this is a bit longer than my push button, it doesn't really matter that I put the push button in this way. Sometimes if people have a shorter connector, they like to put the push button in reverse so that, like, you know, it doesn't stick out. But I honestly think that it's kind of nice to have it this way because just in case anything happens where it gets pushed in too far or whatever, it's a little bit easier to get out. So now I'm just going to push this in with the end of this drill bit. That's a nice button there. It's pushing good. So now I can push this in. And it's perfect. Here we go. Now this person actually wanted theirs sanded, not with a gaffer. So I just take some sandpaper. You want kind of like a thicker grit. This one's 120, but you could get even, you know, heavier duty. I think I would prefer something a little bit more heavy duty. And then all I do here is just sand the inside like so. And I'll go over it a couple of times. Alright, and the soup's done. So I'm going to show you guys a close-up of the connector so you guys can check it out. Alright, so here's our connector. Looks like this. Let me see if I can get a better view of it for you guys. Here we go. So there's our nice little push button connector. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed, learned how to make your push button rivet connections, and how to deal with Polypro. Like I mentioned before, it can be pretty difficult. This is why I use that kind of rotating method with the tubing cutter, because if you just try to kind of like, you know, slice through it right away and it's not warm, it'll kind of like crack and, like, you know, sit in the cracks, then you have to keep cutting it. So definitely like be aware of that. It's just a lot easier when it's a little bit warmer, but since we're in winter right now, don't always have that luxury. Okay, so the biggest advice that I can give you guys that are starting to work on hoops is to, you don't want to settle for, you know, just any old cut or whatever. If you want a really, really nice connection and a really nice hoop, you need to take all those little steps, you know, do like everything right from the start, you know, a nice square cut, you know, round the edges, smooth it out with a Dremel or sandpaper, you know, being like really precise about it can, you know, really make your hoop 20 times better than it was. So anyway, I just wanted to do this tutorial for you guys, and I hope you enjoy, and let me know if you have any other questions. Happy hooping!